Just gonna watch a couple movies. Caddyshack's next. Systemic, intentional, and visceral. Few have crafted deeply sensory experiences like Stanley Kubrick, right? Immersing us deep into story and affecting us and grabbing hold of our memories. I think that weaving of deeply sensory, visceral experiences and purpose are the foundation of ourself as individuals, as organizations, and as communities. It's the root of our creativity. And I think that we get to that place by being intentional about design. So a few years before Stanley, the ancient Greeks, walking through the Acropolis, you were immersed in a place and a time that literally puts you in a connection with your culture, with your community, and where your place in the world was, in every step. In fact, the Greeks literally fattened the columns of every temple, so in perspective it looked perfect, which was very much reinforcing their story and their understanding of the world. A few years after that, the medieval church did exactly the same thing. Every step, every word, every building reinforced purpose, story, and intent. Everything was designed. Everything was intentional. I believe we innately know our inherent need to connect to design and the environment. And yet, we work here. Right? And more profoundly, we learn here. I think we all know the root of this, right? We're trapped in an industrial model still, right? We're trapped in ideas of efficiency and working smart and low risk in being right. It impacts every single one of our institutions and corporations today. We all struggle with this. How do we get to a place where we feel comfortable being wrong or not knowing? We have been fighting this for now over a century. I think that this notion of being right, we've never been more wrong. And I think, in fact, what it's caused us to do is sleepwalk through our environments and short-circuit us in our most fundamental needs for connection and our creativity. I think we continue to invite people all around the country and all around the world to do their very best, trapped in old models and old languages and old metrics and old environments reflective of those old models. How many times have you yourself been told to work smarter? Or how many times have you told somebody to work smart? It's impossible to work in today's needs and struggles and things like that, and the challenges of today in these old models. It will not work. There's incongruence at every step. In fact, as an example, in education, we have the good fortune of designing a lot of learning environments and as well as work environments around the world. We continue to build computer labs for a tool. A lot of us say it's like building a pencil lab. Why would you build a distinct place to go use a tool? In business, we build ideation labs and ideation rooms. Like you're going to leave your cube, switch on and walk into a room, switch on your light, and be creative and ideate. It's ridiculous. We should be creating cultures of ideas and creativity. It's where we should be. And I think through intentional design and thinking about the systemic relationship between story and purpose and experience, you get to that. And I think that the reason that this is so important is I think our organizations still struggle with this notion of why. What's our purpose? You may be familiar with Simon Sinek's TED Talk about the notion of why and the power of why. We all can talk about what our what is. We build computers, or we do interactive, or we build cars. Why we do it is a totally different animal, right? And it's really the root of how we become purposeful. I think on top of that struggle of understanding our why is that we really have a difficult time understanding how to craft experiences that reinforce our story. And I think even moreover, which I think is more important today, is crafting opportunity for others to tell our story. Right? We want to have people to be our advocates, all of our stakeholders to be our advocates. I think this is important because it's our purpose. I believe it's our purpose, the weaving of purpose in deeply profound experience that is foundational to create deep human connections, which is the root of our creativity, our curiosity of discovery, and our compassion. It's where we are as people in those organizations. I think as we all know that we're going through monumental changes, and that all of our stakeholders, internal and external, demand more engagement and understanding how we can contribute. I've had the good fortune, our students had the good fortune over the past years of designing installations in theater, big communication packages, learning environments and workplaces, and big strategies. But I think one of the things we've learned is that the only way any of those projects are truly successful is if they're part of a system. If they're one part of a system, as opposed to being this isolated piece. You know, we develop a workplace or a communication that has very little, it's almost in a silo. They inevitably fail. But it's when you think about them systemically and you make these problems bigger, then they become successful. Years back, of course, it wasn't too long ago that we, in design, did that exact thing. The Bauhaus did that. Right? They thought systemically, they worked intentionally, and they created deeply visceral design. And even in mid-20th century, the Eameses here in the US were very much that. Their entire practice, from theater to incredible exhibitions for IBM and others, to the iconic products and furniture and things like that. Every bit of it was about to create a sense of being, place, and community. It was every single step was systemic, intentional, and visceral. I believe that through this congruence of purpose and experience is where we're able to craft these deeply profound connections with others. And it's through this that everything springs. When we think about purpose and experience, all of the things that you do, from product to curriculum, to structure and organization, to your metrics, to your mindset and culture and language, to how you tell stories, to your environments, all spring from your purpose and experience and grow out of that. And until there's this consistency and congruence to do that, they will fail. We have lived through that for many, many decades. I believe the way to be intentional is really, in our opinion, is to take a much broader view of design. That design is no longer about just an object. That it really needs to be about crafting interactions and behaviors. To ask, what are the behaviors and interactions that I want to support or provoke in a client, in a colleague, in a neighbor, in any of my stakeholders? Design those things first, and from that springs a much broader view. It's asking what is design and space, not only what does design and space feel like, but how does it act? That should be the first step as we look at our organizational design, our product design, our interactive, all of these things should be rooted in how does it act? What are the things that you want to provoke, and you provoke it in an intentional manner? Cinema, and my contention is it gives us the greatest clues to how we do that. Great cinema gives us all of the, as I said, all the clues to be able to craft deeply sensory experiences, all reinforcing a story. Right? They, of course, as you all know, do it through film and through light and sound and texture and frame and movement. Each one of those things goes back intentionally to reinforcing the story. Everyone is immersed in that. We know we're talking great cinema here. We're not talking Caddyshack or whatever. Well, one may argue that Caddyshack's there. But each time it is about reinforcing this deep stakeholder experience. And in The Shining, Danny riding his big wheel, right? Every moment of that film, the Outlook Hotel was a set. It was the largest set ever built. Every single bit of it was intentional, right? From the carpet to the sheen of the plaster to the lighting to the development of the Steadicam to ride behind Danny on the big wheel, right? That totally sucked you into that, right? It brought you right from your childhood of sliding your big wheel around the corner to being deeply immersed in that labyrinth of that hotel, right? The emptiness and stillness of that hotel, you were in it. So every decision Kubrick and his team made was about pulling you deeper and deeper and deeper into that experience. And in fact, right, it also was scary your pants off, right? But this is what we're talking about, is that this kind of intentionality of design, but all rooted on story and our purpose, right? This systemic view of that. So how does that look? I'm going to tell you a bit about a guy named Mark. And Mark was brought in by a legacy design firm several years ago. And this design firm had been around 60, 70 years, multiple offices around the country, and saw that their clients in marketing were struggling exponentially with this huge shift that was going on. They were struggling. It was reflective in the amount of work that they were getting, and their clients were asking them to become advocates for them, and to become expert, and to become thought leaders, and help them move through this enormous transition. And the CEO at the time was like, we don't do that. We're kind of a service firm. We can note take, kind of order takers. You want 3 of these and 4 of those, we'll bang those out for you and give them to you. But they saw the writing on the wall that they would be dead as a firm within a short period of time. So Mark was brought into this firm to make a shift from a service firm to a design practice, to a true design practice. And he did it by being systemic and very intentional and very visceral. But it started with behaviors and language and metrics all around where you wanted to go. Right? What were the behaviors we wanted to have first as an organization? And so that created new metrics, new organizational design, new environments, all in time to reinforce and to provoke a new behavior to think about collaboration in a different way, or to truly think about collaboration and contribution in a very, very different way. And what it led to was, well, first, what he did was not focus immediately on the work. Our first reaction would be, oh, we gotta go change the work, we gotta make it better. But he understood that there wasn't the foundation underneath that to make that work where it needed to be. And so we had to change the system first to allow you to then do really profound work. And what happened was that they did become thought leaders, and they were a big advocate. They ended up doing work all over the world for leading organizations and institutions. I mean, they were seen as thought leaders because, as a culture, they did that. They were also able to recruit some of the best talents around, not only from the best schools, but from a lot of their colleagues, from their competitors as well, because they saw that and they felt it. As designers and folks around design, it's visceral, or you understand exactly, I want to be in that environment and I want to work that way. We also know a lot of other organizations that are just like that. Herman Miller is very much like that. Patagonia is like that. We also know a lot that weren't like that. Pontiac and Oldsmobile and Borders, and on and on and on. BlackBerry soon, right? Let's just keep adding. The list is as long as our arms, right? But it was because they did not sustain this, right? This is hard work. And in fact, Mark ended up leaving his firm. And the old guard came back and undid almost every single thing that they had done. They went from thought leadership and recruiting from the Harvards and SciArcs and RISDs and all these incredible places, being leaders and having 500 to 600 employees to 200, and literally lost almost all of their new clients and all of it. And their old clients weren't back because they were even shifted even further away. So it's not easy to do, and you must sustain it, you must see it through. But it is the impact of looking broader and making the problem bigger actually allows you to see pattern and craft experiences through that in an intentional manner. And from that, you can do some really profound things. Most importantly, in my mind, is that you craft a place that is deeply creative, both as an individual as well as an organization. And that's what we need today to move ahead with the challenges that we have. We all do this already. You don't have to be Francis Bacon surrounded by all of this stuff in his studio, but he intentionally surrounded himself with all of that, what some would consider junk. Others thought it was priceless. He thought it was the absolute only way that he could work. All of us do this already as individuals, conscious or unconscious. We do it by surrounding ourselves with the tools we need, be it the iPhones and the Macs and all these things, or a pencil in my case. When we're designing theater, in a performative theater, it's about how does the story move, and how does every single touch of that story move from what the intended experience is to be. Whether it's through spaces like this and designs and translations of these things, to a learning environment. Learning environments and work environments are starting to blur today because they're fundamentally asking very different questions. It's about the interactions and behaviors. What does it mean to be truly collaborative? What are the tools we need to be collaborative? What does it mean to nurture critical problem solving? What does it mean to really work on very, very complex problems? Problems that are far more complex than we've ever worked on today. How do we leverage technology? How do we leverage space? But in the end, these things are the tools for us to create very dynamic and agile, these are the things that create very agile and dynamic tools for us to support and to provoke and nurture our creative voices as individuals and organizations. It is the thing that allows us to move forward. And we have to move forward this way. It's a design issue. This is all about being intentional about design. Today we are literally covered in shrouds of these old models, right? And old metrics and how do you get rewarded, and old languages and behaviors. As we struggle to be collaborative and to struggle to use tools and technologies and things like that, it's really for us to start unshrouding ourselves, to take hold of that, of this opportunity and be intentional about it. It's through that congruence of this purpose and experience that we can really make fundamental differences in our organizations. And it's by being, in closing, it's about being systemic and intentional and visceral. And in my opinion, that is where we are unshrouded. We are at our most creative as individuals.